Royce Barrett stood at the altar, his jaw locked as he watched the woman moving toward him. She was nothing like what he had imagined, nothing like what he had wished for. Yet in 6 months, this same woman would save his life, his ranch, and everything he believed he understood about himself. Morning light spilled through the narrow church windows, stretching long shadows across the worn wooden floor as Royce tugged at his collar, sweat forming on his brow despite the cool air. His father, Cyrus Wainwright, sat rigid in the front pew, arms folded tight, cold eyes fixed on his son like a hawk watching wounded prey. There was no way out now. The debts were crushing, the creditors relentless, and this marriage was the only barrier standing between the Barrett ranch and seizure. Magnolia Voss moved slowly down the aisle, her plain brown dress whispering softly with every step. Royce's stomach knotted as he took in her round face and heavy build. This was not how he had pictured his wedding day. He had imagined beauty, envy in other men's eyes, pride instead of shame. Instead, he was binding himself to a woman he barely knew, a woman whose father owned the neighboring land that carried water rights more valuable than gold in this drought-ravaged territory. "Breathe, boy," he murmured under his breath, his hands shaking despite his effort to steady them. "It's business, nothing more." But when Magnolia reached the altar, something caught him off guard. She lifted her head and met his gaze directly, and instead of embarrassment or nervous fear, he saw something else entirely. Her eyes were calm, firm, almost daring, as though she could hear every bitter thought racing through his mind. "Mr. Barrett," she said quietly, her voice carrying a strength he hadn't expected. "Miss Voss," he answered, his voice thin and restrained. The preacher began the familiar vows, but Royce barely registered the words. His thoughts churned with resentment toward his father, toward this forced arrangement, toward the woman beside him who symbolized everything he believed he was losing. He imagined the smirks in town, the whispered jokes, the laughter behind his back about the wife he had taken. So when the preacher asked if he would take Magnolia as his wife, his "I do" sounded flat, hollow, stripped of warmth. But when Magnolia spoke, her voice rang clear through the small church, steady and unashamed, and something in its certainty made him look at her again. Her eyes were not lowered. They burned with a quiet fire he hadn't noticed before. When she said, "I do," it sounded less like surrender and more like a challenge. The ring weighed heavily on his finger as they walked back down the aisle together, but heavier still was the realization that he knew nothing at all about the woman he had just married. And from the way she carried herself, spine straight, chin lifted despite the murmurs of the gathered crowd, he sensed she was far more than she appeared. What Royce didn't know was that before the sun set on their wedding day, Magnolia would prove just how dangerous it was to underestimate her. The ride back to the Barrett ranch felt endless. Magnolia sat beside him on the wagon bench, hands folded neatly, her silence thick and watchful. It wasn't the silence of submission, but the calm pause before a storm breaks. Finally, desperate to shatter the tension, Royce spoke. "I suppose you'll want to see the house." His tone came out harsher than he intended. "I've already seen it," Magnolia replied without turning her head. "3 times, in fact, while you were in town drinking away your disappointment about this marriage." Royce's grip tightened on the reins. How could she know that? He had thought himself careful. "I don't know what you mean." "Of course you don't," she said, and there was a hint of dry amusement in her voice. "Just like you don't know that your ranch hands have been selling off your cattle to cover their own debts. Or that your father owes money to more people than just my family." The wagon jolted as it struck a rut, but Royce barely felt it. "That's not possible," he said. "Those men have been with us for years. Loyalty doesn't fill empty stomachs, Mr. Barrett, and desperate men make desperate choices." Magnolia turned then, fixing him with a look that made his stomach drop. "Your foreman, Wade McKinley, has been skimming from the cattle sales for 6 months. Your father knows, but he can't fire him. Wade's the only thing keeping the rest of the hands from walking." When they reached the ranch house, Royce remained frozen on the seat, staring at the land as though seeing it for the first time. The sagging fences, the neglected corral, the thinning herd grazing in the distance. It all fell into place. This wasn't just gambling losses. They had been bleeding money from every direction, and this marriage was only a temporary bind, not a cure. "How do you know all this?" he asked quietly. "Because I've been preparing for this marriage far longer than you have," Magnolia replied as she stepped down from the wagon with unexpected grace. "My father didn't arrange this union solely for land, Mr. Barrett. He arranged it because your ranch controls water access for 3 counties. But that control means nothing unless someone is smart enough to protect it." She paused at the front steps, turning back to him. "The real question is whether you're wise enough to listen, or too proud to lose everything while pretending you know best." Royce watched her disappear inside the house that now belonged to them both, his thoughts spinning. Who was this woman? How had she uncovered so much? And most unsettling of all, what else did she know that he didn't? As he unhitched the horses, one thought refused to leave him. If Magnolia understood his problems this well, what exactly was her plan to fix them? By evening, Royce learned that marrying Magnolia was like unleashing a storm into his home. He found her in his father's study, seated behind the heavy oak desk as though it were hers by right. Papers lay spread before her like a campaign map, account books, deeds, legal documents covering every inch of the surface. What chilled him most was the sight of Wade McKinley standing stiffly in front of the desk, pale and sweating like a boy caught in a lie. "What's happening here?" Royce demanded. Wade swallowed hard. "Your wife, she knows about the cattle." "Of course I do," Magnolia said evenly, not lifting her eyes. "I know you've been selling 15 head a month and reporting 10. I know you plan to blame rustlers once the numbers collapsed." The room seemed to tilt. The figures had never aligned, but his father handled the books, and Wade had always been trusted. "Wade, tell me this isn't true." The foreman's shoulders sagged. "The ranch was sinking anyway. I've got children to feed." "Had," Magnolia corrected sharply. "You had employment. Now you have a decision. Return what you stole, or the sheriff will be here before dawn." Wade's expression hardened. "You think you can walk in here and give orders? You're nobody, just some fat woman your father paid to get rid of." Silence fell heavy. Royce expected her to shrink, to falter. Instead, Magnolia rose slowly, her movements controlled and deliberate. "Mr. McKinley," she said softly, "you mistake my size for weakness. That's your first error." She opened a desk drawer and removed a small leather journal. "Your second was assuming I came unprepared." She flipped it open and began reading dates and figures, each one draining more color from Wade's face. "I have 4 months of records, every buyer, every stolen dollar. Should I continue?" Wade's hand twitched toward his gun, then froze as Magnolia's voice cut through the room. "I wouldn't. Your third mistake was believing I came alone." Heavy boots sounded on the porch. 3 unfamiliar men appeared outside the window, their weapons and hardened faces marking them as dangerous. "Who are they?" Royce whispered. Magnolia smiled, not kindly. "Men who ensure promises are kept, Mr. Barrett." Wade lunged for the door but was blocked by the largest of the newcomers, a scarred giant with eyes shaped by violence. "Going somewhere?" the man asked pleasantly. In that moment, Royce understood he had married far more than a solution to debt. The confrontation ended quickly. Faced with 3 armed men and a woman who knew every detail of his theft, Wade McKinley collapsed in on himself, bravado dissolving into panic. "The money's hidden in my cabin," he stammered, voice breaking. "Most of it, anyway. I spent some on medicine for my youngest." Magnolia's expression softened, just barely. "How much?" $40. The fever nearly took her. "Then you'll return the rest," Magnolia said calmly, "and consider the 40-year severance." She nodded toward the scarred giant. "Hank will go with you. You'll be gone by morning." As Wade was led away, Royce caught Magnolia's arm. Wait. Who are those men? How do you know them? For the first time since he'd met her, uncertainty flickered across her face. That's complicated. Complicated how? Royce pressed, grip tightening. My foreman just confessed because armed strangers walked into my house. I deserve answers. Magnolia pulled free and moved to the window, watching Hank escort Wade toward the bunkhouse. My father didn't arrange this marriage just for land, Royce. Your ranch controls the water. And there are people who will kill to own it. What kind of people? The kind who don't tolerate refusal. 3 weeks ago, a man named Cormac Dullan offered to buy your ranch. When your father said no, Dullan promised accidents happen to stubborn men. Royce's stomach dropped. You're saying someone wants me dead. I'm saying anyone who controls this land is a target. That's why I brought protection. That's why we must work together, whether you like me or not. Before Royce could respond, a gunshot cracked from the direction of the bunkhouse. Through the window, they saw Hank stagger, clutching his shoulder, as Wade vaulted onto a horse with a rifle. He was ready, Magnolia whispered. Another shot shattered the study window. Royce dragged her down behind the desk as bullets tore through the walls. Stay down, he shouted, reaching for his gun. Peering out, his blood ran cold. Wade wasn't alone. 6 riders crested the property line, all armed, moving with purpose. Magnolia, Royce said slowly, how did Wade know we were confronting him tonight? Her face drained of color. Because someone told him. The house erupted in chaos as gunfire rained through the timber. How many men? Royce shouted. 3, Magnolia called back. Hank's wounded. The others are pinned at the barn. They were trapped, outnumbered, in a house that couldn't withstand a siege. As Royce reached for his rifle, he froze. Through the shattered window, Wade pointed directly at the study, guiding the riders. He knew where we were hiding, Royce said. He knew the plan. Someone close betrayed us. Magnolia finished the thought grimly. Only a few knew. Then Royce's chest tightened. My father. Where is he? He went to town after the wedding. Magnolia's eyes widened. He's the only one who knew the timing. Another volley shattered the remaining glass. Outside, Wade shouted, burn it. Smoke crept through the windows as flames took hold of the porch. We have to move, Royce said. The back door's covered, Magnolia replied. 2 riders circled earlier. Smoke thickened. Firelight danced across the walls. Then Magnolia stood, shocking him, and calmly gathered papers into a leather satchel. What are you doing? These documents matter more than the house. They explain why Wade betrayed you. Why Dullan wants this land. She pulled out a marked map. This isn't only water rights. A railroad is coming. Your ranch sits on the proposed route. Whoever owns it will be unimaginably rich. Before Royce could process this, burning beams crashed through the wall. Fire spread fast. The root cellar, Royce grabbed her hand. There's a tunnel to the barn. They ran as the ceiling collapsed behind them. As they reached the cellar door, Royce heard his father's voice outside. Royce. Son. Are you in there? Cyrus Wainwright had returned, sounding genuinely shocked. The tunnel creaked as they crawled through darkness. Your father sounds surprised, Magnolia whispered. Then who warned Wade? Royce asked, dread building. They emerged in the barn to find Hank wounded but armed, with 2 others guarding the doors. He knew everything, Hank said. Positions. The tunnel. Magnolia, who else knew your plan? Royce asked. Her hand flew to her mouth. Only my father. And his business partner. The man who arranged the marriage. Ezekiel Marsh. My own father. The realization hit like a blow. Outside, Cyrus shouted again. He doesn't know, Royce realized. Before they could decide what to do, Frank called out. Riders coming. 10 at least. Torches approached in formation. Cormac Dullan, Magnolia breathed. This was planned. The marriage. The theft. Tonight. Royce understood they had walked into a trap months in the making. Your father sold us out, he said bitterly. Magnolia's face hardened. With us dead, he profits from both sides. She pulled out a second map bearing official seals. Insurance, she said. And the reason he wants me dead. This map showed the real railroad route. It wasn't coming through the ranch, but through land that needed their water rights. Everything was built on a lie. Only 3 people had seen it. The commissioner. Magnolia. Now Royce. Gunfire erupted outside. They saw Dullan surround Cyrus. He needs him alive, Magnolia said. To sign the deed. Dullan rode into the firelight, confident, cruel. Your son's dead, he called. But Cyrus stood his ground. I won't sell to you. Kill him, Dullan ordered. Magnolia stepped out, holding the map. Before you do, Mr. Dullan, look closely. She revealed the truth. Dullan's face went pale, then hardened. Then I'll kill you all. Magnolia smiled dangerously. That would be a mistake. The sound of hooves thundered. Territorial marshals emerged, rifles ready. Perfect timing, Magnolia called. Dullan lunged for his gun. The fight ended in seconds. Surrounded and outgunned, his men surrendered. Dullan fell wounded. As the marshals dragged them away, Royce stood beside Magnolia amid the ruins, finally understanding what this marriage truly meant. As the marshals led Cormac Dullan away in irons, the fire finally began to die, leaving the Barrett homestead reduced to smoking beams and ash. Royce stood beside Magnolia in the flickering glow, the night air heavy with the smell of burned timber and gunpowder. His father sat on the ground nearby, shaken but alive, staring at the destruction with hollow eyes. The truth of the day pressed down on Royce all at once. He had lost his home, the place where he had grown up, but he had gained something far more unexpected. You planned all of this, Royce said quietly, not accusing, only stunned. Magnolia looked at the ruins, then at him. I planned to stay alive, she said. And I planned to make sure you did too. You could have walked away, he said. Let them destroy everything. Why risk yourself for someone who didn't even want to marry you? Magnolia turned to face him fully. In the dying firelight, her eyes held a depth that tightened his chest. Because I saw who you were, Royce Barrett. Not the man who judged me by how I looked, but the man who would crawl through fire to protect his family. The man who would stand and fight even when everything was falling apart. The word struck him harder than any blow that day. He realized how blind he had been, focused only on what he thought he was losing instead of what he had been given. Magnolia was not just clever or brave. She was loyal, strategic, and willing to sacrifice everything to protect those under her care. The railroad money, Royce said suddenly, understanding dawning. The real route will still make us wealthy, just not the way anyone expected. Magnolia nodded. The new line needs water access for the depot. Our water. Legally, cleanly, and fairly. Cyrus Wainwright finally looked up, shame etched across his face. I was wrong, he said hoarsely. About everything. Magnolia met his gaze without hatred. What matters is what happens next. 6 months later, Royce Barrett stood on the porch of a rebuilt home, watching Magnolia direct the construction of a new railroad station near the ranch. She moved with the same calm authority he had seen from the beginning, respected by workers who listened when she spoke. The ranch was thriving, the water rights secured, the future no longer ruled by fear or debt. Royce smiled to himself as he watched her. He had been forced into a marriage with a woman he thought he didn't want. What he found was a partner who saved his life, his land, and taught him that real strength often comes in forms the world is too quick to dismiss.